Welcome to the AgeTech Collaborative Forum from AARP. If you are an innovator who wants to work on important problems with the upside potential to change the world, you're in the right room. We're here at CES all week to explore how we together as an ecosystem can apply emerging technology to make aging easier for billions of people worldwide. So we all know as innovators, you want to work with corporate channel partners to help scale your business. But what do the corporates need? How are they serving older adults, and how might your product or solution fit in to their objectives so that together you can grow? Because we all know that we want to do business with the fast-growing but vastly underserved and often misunderstood, unfortunately, older consumer segment. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. We're better together. So there's a treat this session because we're going to be talking to 4 major organizations who are going to talk about their white space opportunities and how they want to work with you. All right? So let's get started. So super excited to have Brendan McEntee here from MITRE. We had a great conversation yesterday talking about Open Gen 5G and the testbed community of MITRE. And now let's dig in, Brendan, to talk about what you're looking for in innovators.
Thank you. And I want to thank AARP. It's been a very incredible opportunity to be part of the AgeTech Collaborative. For those of you who think about getting into the aging space with technology, you've got to look at the collaborative. So I'm Brendan McEntee. I'm with MITRE Ingenuity. I have an interesting name for my title that may be familiar to a lot of startups, Incubation Lead. And MITRE is an operator of what is called federally funded research and development centers. There are about 40 of these in the US, these FFRDCs, and MITRE operates 6 of them. MITRE, I think, is true to a Forbes article that called us the most influential company that you've never heard of. We pioneer technologies. In fact, if you flew today, you got here using the air traffic control system, and that's a technology that MITRE pioneered. Another technology that may have helped you navigate around Las Vegas is GPS, which is a technology that MITRE pioneered. And most recently, we worked to be the trusted partner to integrate the data behind the exposure notifications that you receive in your phone. So just to give you an example of what MITRE is, we have 9,000 staff, and we have a bunch of different specialized expertise. While we started in the defense arena, we expanded out into healthcare most recently, and we operate what's called the Health Federally Funded Research and Development Center for the Centers of Medicaid and Medicaid Services. 2 years ago, MITRE realized that in order to further impact the mission of our federal sponsors, the federal government, we needed to engage beyond with the private industry. And so we formed what's called MITRE Ingenuity. And MITRE Ingenuity is a way for us to work with the private sector to accelerate where they're going. And that's why we're here with the AgeTech group, because we know there are incredible demographic shifts that are underway, where we're going to have much more older folks than younger folks. And we're trying to explore where MITRE and MITRE Ingenuity can help establish and pioneer new technologies with the private sector. And so we think the unique position with us is working directly to access our deep expertise in technology, including how all these different Internet of Things connected devices, where it's emerging that probably within this year, my phone may be able to access 1,000 connected devices that are within a mile from me to give me good insights. But there's a lot of questions about how do you actually link those different data streams from different companies together. Not to mention privacy concerns if you're trying to enter into the health space and use that for health applications. And we want to be at the forefront of helping make those possible. So we have 3 areas where we're trying to focus. One is in grand challenges, where we'd like folks to collaborate with us. We're looking at sort of the white space that exists between where government and policy can help spur innovation. where philanthropy can help fund sort of the initial funding of these great new ideas. And where industry then can come into play to sustain. So there's definitely a gap in the middle where there's technologies that need to exist that do not exist because no one wants to invest in them. And that's where we're focusing in grand challenges. How do we make this possible? The second area is in co-design and test beds. So we've done a great job of setting up a lot of test beds that allow different companies to come in and have all of the ecosystem partners that are necessary to make something operationalize. We focused first in our Open Generation Consortium, where we created a telecom testbed that allows uncrewed aircraft systems to operate so that they can get the needed data that needs to exist for them to be able to then convince that these new technologies that are going to be flying around are safe and secure to operate in controlled airspaces. And our goal is to expand from that into test beds in the healthy aging arena, focusing specifically on communities, smart communities and smart homes. So as we're walking around with our devices, whatever those will look like in the future, we have a way for those to be tested immediately. So we'd like startups here to talk to us about the great ideas that they want to exist so we can understand the problems you are tackling and need to tackle that we can help make easier for you. The last area, MITRE is known for cybersecurity and defense, and with the thousands of Internet of Things connected devices, we really need to be looking at systems of security. So if you have a device, it's connecting and interacting with others, how do you know that device is safe? And so we want to explore with how we can help consumer electronic companies, startups, ensure that their technologies are safe, and we have a lot to offer there.
That is broad and fabulous. So thank you, MITRE, and thank you, Brendan. So for startups that have an IoT application, for startups that want to understand much more about the complexity of data sharing, data security, and privacy, for startups that want to be part of systems in complex connected homes, which then is connected communities. So, okay, if you have one of those, talk to Brendan. When a startup works with MITRE and the test beds, what is the experience? What can they expect? What kind of resources can they get in partnership with MITRE?
So I will say that we follow the lean startup process. So a lot of what we do is exploring new ways to engage with different partners, which I know is a little bit nebulous because it means that what you can think of is something that we could achieve together. But I'll say we have some standard ways that we do work together. One would be through easy ways that you can partner with us to access expertise. In some of those cases, we ask you to bring your funding. So let's say you needed a clinical expert, a digital health expert, and somebody who understands payment policy, and you had some funding, and you were worried about having that team member be on your payroll full time. We could try and figure out a way to have MITRE be able to bring that expertise to you. We also have our own funds that we invest in, and so we could work with you to try and align those funds with areas where we want to go and find synergies there. We could also, if you've got some grant funding that you're chasing after, we could do that. And we have a lot of relationships pre-existing in a lot of hospitals and health centers in the US. So many different ways. I think the most important thing is that we're impact-driven and we're a public good foundation. And so we need to be very mindful that we're achieving something that is impactful for the government and sort of their missions and anything that we're working on. Which, walking around the AgeTech booth here, I know there's great alignment already with many of the startups here.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brendan. So, Brendan, how do people get in touch with you, Brendan?
Oh, please come to our booth, MITRE Ingenuity. We've got a QR code that's on the screen. You can just scan that, and there's a quick box in there where you can submit information, your name, and what you'd like to talk about, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you.
All right, next up. So we're here at CES, and there's technology everywhere, and sometimes it's difficult to understand how that technology can work its way into a product, and then that product has the market fit for older adults. So let's understand the core technology and the cool things that are on the horizon. Working with LG Electronics, please welcome Joshua DeFrancis. Come on up.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah,
And thank you to AARP. Really excited. This is amazing what you have
It's
here.
amazing,
All
and
these startups.
the convening, right, of startups and corporates and technology producers and infrastructure, so forth. So, take it away. What is LG doing in terms of technology for AgeTech, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Josh DeFrancis. I'm head of incubation at LG Electronics. And LG, most people know, is an amazing device company that makes incredible TVs, appliances, has an energy company. But really what I work on is I work at LG Nova. I sit at LG Nova, which is the Silicon Valley-based innovation group for LG. And we are really focused on helping LG expand into new areas by working with startups, including digital health is one of our big areas. And within digital health, there's a lot of things that relate to AgeTech. We think there's a big opportunity as healthcare shifts toward to the home, which is going to happen. McKinsey did a big study that $265 billion of care is spent in hospitals is going to shift to the home in the next 5 years. And as that happens, we think there's a really incredible opportunity for care to be delivered more effectively in the home, in particular to older adults. And we think that LG can play an important role in delivering that care more efficiently, creating better care for the patients, but also improving the provider experience and giving the provider the ability to better service the patient. So we're really excited. We're looking for great startups in this space, and happy to share a little bit more about our model if that'd be helpful.
Let's dig in, because there's the use case of the technology, but then the how. So tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a new group. We're a year old, and we launched a incubation process. So we have a grand challenge similar to the individual before me, but we have a grand challenge which we use to engage startups. We have a structured incubation program that really involves entrepreneurs and residents who engage with the startups that we think are really exciting and interesting, and it's a collaborative process. So we explore what can we do together, what are the opportunities to work together, and within that, we do things like we'll give grant money for pilot, up to $100K for a pilot. But ultimately, the goal isn't to kind of incubate and exit. We want to find great partners to work with, and the end goal is to enter into a really great commercial relationship with these companies, these incredible startups, and do something exciting together. We also have a venture fund. We created a $100 million venture fund, which we can use to invest in the startups as well, if it makes sense. Some companies, that's really important. It helps kind of catalyze their growth so they can work with us. Other companies are later stage, and that's totally okay. We can still work with them through a commercial relationship. But that's a little bit about how it works.
So do you have some examples of some startups that you have worked with that represent kind of the shining example of a qualified lead?
Yeah, so there are. We're new, so we just kicked off this last year, but we work with some larger companies in healthcare too. We did a big enterprise relationship with Amwell, which we're really excited about. And on the startup side, we this last year picked 10 startups we're working with, and we are in the process of kind of executing those commercial agreements and doing venture deals with those companies. Some of them we can talk about. There's an incredible company called Digby Health, which is does gut and microbiome testing. It provides solutions for weight loss, solutions for gut diseases. There's another company in the healthcare space called XR Health, which is really using kind of virtual reality for occupation to better deliver occupational therapy or physical therapy in the home. But those are just two. But we have about, I think, 6 of our 10 are in the health space, and we hope to really expand that this next year.
So help us understand then the relationship. So I know you're new, so you're probably figuring this out, but so a startup comes to you and they've got an idea to use some LG Electronics in some way. How do they get access to more of that tech, to the brilliant minds who are producing that tech, to you, to the business mentors inside your company?
Yeah, so we this past year we did kind of an outside-in process where startups could apply to work with us. We're actually going to shift a hybrid, which is both outside in and us more kind of inside out. But during that outside in process, we had kind of this grand challenge, which startups could apply to. And then throughout that, we selected some that we thought were good fits. There are others that are great we kept in the ecosystem, but they just weren't right for that time. And those startups we engaged directly with our entrepreneurs and residents. So we kind of had a 3 to 4 month process where our entrepreneurs and residents would engage with the startups and come up with ideas to work together. Like, what is a partnership idea that we can explore? And kind of using lean startup methodology. So we're learning from others. And then we kind of went through stage gates. And finally at the end, we did a pilot kind of after that. If we thought we pitched kind of the collaboration, we thought there was something great there. We did pilot after that and funded a $100K pilot. And then based on the results of the pilot, we selected some to really enter into partnerships with. As we build our healthcare business, which we are actively kind of creating a healthcare business.
Yeah, so in healthcare spans so many aspects. Are there particular use cases that, kind of rise above in terms of priorities for you?
Yeah, so we kind of within the broader trend of healthcare moving to the home, we think that makes sense for LG because of the connected ecosystem we have in the home. But we are really focused on personalized health, so either solutions for chronic disease management, for aging in place. Personalized health is a big one. Then the other one is solutions that enable providers, building around what we're doing with Amwell, to better deliver care more efficiently, to improve the quality of care. LG's motto is "Life's good," and we're really trying to make life better for everyone. So
like the cooking shows where they give you that secret ingredient and you have to use that in your recipe.
Yeah, exactly.
So for LG Electronics, what are you debuting here at CES, or what are you most excited about that if startups were using that particular set of technologies, that's kind of a plus in their column?
Yeah, so there are two. So I encourage folks downstairs in Eureka Park, which is the startup exhibit. We have an LG Nova booth, which is kind of the innovation group. And we have a lot of our startups we're working with there, and encourage you to come by and see some of them and learn about what we're doing together. We also, broader LG Electronics in the main convention has a really cool booth too that's got a lot of really cutting edge technology that is fun to go see. So I recommend that as well.
Awesome. And then what's your front door? How do people knock on your door and enter into your process? Do you have a pitch competitions, or are there applications? How do people connect with you?
Yeah, so we have a number of things. At the booth, there's a QR code you can scan and learn how to get in touch with us. We also have a bunch of team members down there, including some of the entrepreneurs and residents on my team that engage directly with the startups, and you can chat with them as well and get connected. But in addition to that, lgnova.com, check it out. You can submit your information. We'd love to get in touch. I'm always happy to chat with folks, and we're excited to meet more great startups, especially in this kind of AgeTech space, and learn more.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Joshua.
Thank you so much.
CES.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So you're building an AgeTech application using some great LG technology. You've tested it through the MITRE test beds, and now you want to sell into senior living operators. What do they want to buy? How would your solution integrate into what's already a complex ecosystem? So we're excited to now introduce Nick Patel of ThriveWell, who will give us some sense of the white space opportunities in senior living. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. So just by way of quick introduction, I'm with a company called ThriveWell. We're actually the first booth past this wall. We're a testbed partner to the AgeTech Collaborative. We've kind of seen the vision that Andy had for this whole exhibit here, and we've been kind of helping him from the get-go to be a testbed partner. My company serves the senior living post-acute care sector, and we're basically their technology office, you can call CIO, and all services that are needed. So we often help them with the technology stack and architecture of what they need to think through. Also, we help them on security. But a lot of times, they're overwhelmed with what they see in the tech space. There's just too much tech. And senior living operators, what they do well is they take care of the elderly. They're not the best at picking out technologies, and they don't know, what's good, bad, or ugly. So that's where we help. So in this journey, we've looked at a lot of startups, a lot of them through AgeTech, but also just independently. And where we see there's gaps to be formed, or there's gaps that we see in industry, often the startups can't see that same gap. So they come in with something that they see as a great point solution. Often there's a lot of other factors that are not their fault. And we're helping startups kind of understand that. And we've been doing quite a few pilots. We did 2 pilots this year. We're trying to get to 3 to 4 pilots next year, maybe more with the customer set I have. And they've been very successful. So what I was going to talk through was, how to approach the senior living communities, what to expect, some of the pitfalls of how things could fail as you engage them, and some of the industry challenges that they're seeing that they're not obvious to the startup ecosystem, because we're doing great innovation whilst they're trying to keep kind of the industry alive. So if we start with pilots, obviously, we all have really great point solutions, some integrated solutions. I think it's important to basically at first identify the right folks within the campus. So these campuses that we work with, they're very fragmented. The CEO is probably the only glue that really understands the full picture. There's clinical, there's dining, there's many different aspects of senior living wellness, and we're seeing a lot of good technology. Identifying the right person who really understands how you're solving the problem, and hearing from that person what their problems really are. And sometimes they're really, really hard to predict. They've got problems that your solution can't solve. But on the surface, it looks quite obvious. So in our pilots, we typically look for pain points that are system-wide. We think a small pilot could prove out something quickly and then be rolled out across the board. And where we've failed and now started succeeding is really capturing what the KPIs are and getting buy-in all the way up to the CEO that if we solve this, you're going to buy in and this is going to solve a problem across the board. And in the vetting process, I think it's important for startups to ask questions like, what's your EMR? What other technologies are you using? Do you capture data? How do you report things? And how's this technology going to be fitting in with the rest of the stuff that you have on campus? That doesn't often become a primary factor, but you want to be careful that you don't force something in that doesn't really play well with the rest of the tech stack that's well established. In reverse, there's really now an open API ecosystem. I know the EMRs we work with, Point Click Care, Matrix Care, they're all learning now that they have to be open to consuming startup data and integrating. So the further along you are with that discussion, I think that plays into a lot of decision making. And in the pilot itself, we often ask a small group to be involved in a write-up after the pilot's finished. So it's easy to understand what was good, what was bad, what happened. And that's how we quantify the success of the pilot. It's been very successful. We've gone through quite a few now where we're seeing we can accelerate the journey. We did a pilot last year with Harvard, which was very useful in helping us understand the various types of data that's available for startups and how senior living operators can leverage that data in their overall ecosystem. And I think that there's if you look to CEOs and the guys who run these operations, they're not interested in their infrastructure or the second layer of applications that they use to support their system. They're really interested in innovation because that's going to help them bring the types of residents they want to their campus. So there's definitely appetite from the top to keep studying this. But to make it easy, we've kind of facilitated and become a testbed partner. So the industry challenges that we've seen, and they're quite obvious over the last 2 years. Occupancy is a huge challenge. And we're seeing technology is going to be somewhat of the bridge that helps solve for occupancy. There's a massive wellness movement. So as you're thinking about moving into senior care, we hear what are the driving factors. So we know safety is one. The family members want their loved one to be safe. So anything that's monitoring and helping relay information back and forward has become really hot topic. So the IoT movement, how you connect that data back and relay it back to the family members. Engagement platforms, any information that can flow and make you feel like you're in touch and involved in that person's life. Those are very, very strong startups that are doing well. And also from a wellness perspective, we've seen digital health, wearables. I think our next generation of retirees, they're going to want to move to a place not because they need help staying alive longer. They want to live their best life. They want to accelerate what they couldn't do while they were busy working, right? Wellness, like fitness tracking and checking on their own health and finding ways to give that data back to the residents. I think our next set of residents are going to be tech savvy enough to be able to digest and make sense of it. And the operators are starting to learn that's really important. You have to be able to convey that back to the residents. The other challenge we're seeing is on the staffing side. So what I thought I'd never see when I kind of joined the sector 5 years ago is robots are really in high demand. So we're seeing dining robots. We've seen at this exhibit just down here, robots that cut the lawn, robots that can sweep up, robots we've seen in physical therapy. And I think robotics generally has a big role to play in senior living because of the staffing crisis, but also techniques of how to attract the right employees and make sure that the mapping is correct, so that we know we're working with a couple of machine learning companies that help you identify the right talent and understand why they might be leaving and structure their employment correctly. So there's a lot of anxiety, and we've got a crisis across the country on staffing. So those are the challenges that the operators are seeing. Also, there's kind of, I'd say, two categories of operators. There's a very large volume of new construction going on and modern campuses being emerging, lifestyle campuses, mostly with somewhat of an AL component. We're seeing older, sometimes not-for-profit campuses are starting to lose their way because they're too SNF focused, and their infrastructure hasn't been updated for quite some time. There's still this real need to bring innovation in, but that also has to be navigated. I think we talked a little bit about the security aspects and making sure everything is secure and you have a lot of different moving parts on campus. That's something that I think startups should proactively come to the table with and say, hey, we're worried about this too. We want to make sure our solution doesn't create an issue for you overall from security. So those are the types of things we're seeing. And we think this whole movement's going to just keep growing and accelerating. And we're very lucky that we've been allowed to participate in it. Andy's been a great supporter of us. And we're learning a whole lot about the startups that are here. So we're right here at this booth, right over this wall. We try to bring the right startups and make the match with our customer set. And then we help them make sure the pilot's successful. And we think there's a lot of good pilots to be had this year and then beyond.
So, Nick, thank you so much for giving us such a comprehensive view of the senior living operator. We know that in the past couple of years, certainly through COVID, a lot of the decisions were really around life and death in reaction to keeping everyone safe. And now as we emerge from that, have you seen a lot more investment in technology from the senior living campuses just to kind of get onto the online world? And how's that really positioned them to then be more receptive to some of these startups?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the silver lining, if there was any in COVID, was senior living operators had to become digital. They had to allow people to work from home. They had to allow family members to communicate through voice and video with their residents because these campuses were locked off. And as a result, they quickly learned how bad their networks were, some of the investment that hadn't been done for many years. So that investment became critical for them to really survive that period of time. And as a result now, I think there's appetite to spend on technology. There's a very fast awareness that was missing, quite frankly, for senior living operators, how critical technology is in their operations. And I think we've seen a shift that will not reverse, meaning folks know now that technology has a huge role to play. And we're now seeing our next set of 10 years of retirees, they're going to be a lot like us. They use cell phones. They're very savvy people. They're expecting a lot more. And just some of the stats that might help quantify why it wasn't like that. The average age in senior living was in the low to mid 80s, and most people moved in because they had to. There's been a big shift in wellness, and people are migrating for lifestyle and just wanting to be in an environment where they can live their best life. And those folks come in with huge expectations around technology. So I think that also makes a big difference.
Right. So it sounds like there was this, accelerated investment in technology to kind of up level and be on, with parity, right, with, other consumer, sectors. So that's great. And it sounds like there's been an evolution in thinking around, the combination of high touch and high tech when it comes to caregiving, right? And so maybe where residents and care providers maybe, were concerned about maybe technology being impersonal. Now they're seeing it, it sounds like you say, with robots and so forth, being a part of the solution. And so help us understand, what are the right qualities about a high touch solution that actually senior living operators would be excited about?
Yeah, so maybe I can give an example. So the dining robots have hit it by storm, and I was shocked at how quickly they got adopted. At one of the leading age national conferences, we had about 400 people sitting in to listen about the use case. So I think the key is we've seen these robots fail, and we've seen where they've been implemented correctly. It's where technologists have come in and helped work through the use case. It's a really simple use case. In dining, the old method for dining was you have a set of staff that run between the kitchen and back to the table, and they're basically doing everything, taking orders, cleaning plates, going back and forth, refilling drinks. When the robots arrived, they had to change the use case, meaning the robots are now going to do the running back and forward, and the dining staff member had to retrain and learn to say, we're just going to stand right here. So anything that they would normally run back for, like typical drinks, condiments, cutlery, they put that on a stand or something close by. They just never leave. And as a result, that created a lot of efficiencies. It actually raised the experience for dining because they were relaying back and this robot's running back and forward. And I think it's going to take off. We're going to see that as the norm maybe in 5 years in restaurants too.
Wow, and that's just so beautiful because you can reimagine then the caregiver experience and why people are drawn to this work. They want to be with the other people and they want to do their best work, but if they're exhausted from the administrative part of their work, we're seeing such a chronic caregiver shortage. And it reminds me of an application that we see coming out of Japan, a bladder sensor, sonar bladder sensor, right? One of the big concerns in senior living is incontinence and people, unfortunately sitting for a long time, maybe with wet undergarments and so forth. And it's all very sad and filled with shame and leads to lots of other, catastrophic, outcomes. A sonar bladder sensor could be attached to the person and the dashboard is at the nurse's station so they know who's ready to go, right? And so instead of the caregiver interaction being arriving at somebody's room, having to change a diaper, apply some ointment, and everybody's kind of filled with shame, now a caregiver could arrive at the room and say, hey, Mr. Jones, how about we go play a game of checkers at the end of the hall? Let's stop at the bathroom on the way. And so that the 15 minutes together is spent playing checkers and not in this uncomfortable situation, But it takes a lot for somebody to say yes to a sonar bladder sensor, right? So help us understand how senior living operators are making these decisions and taking these risks. And what does a startup, what's incumbent on the startup to show in terms of benefits and outcomes, especially if it's kind of theoretical and you don't really have the data yet to support it?
No, I think that one's a great example. We've looked at two startups that have, we call them smart pants. The diaper has the sensor on it. So the way they've brought customers on board is, one is the family members. We don't want grandpa sitting in his own mess. We want to make sure someone's proactively doing this. And through rounding, that's very hard. So when you have these sensors, you can sense very quickly. And what we learned through the data was someone who's in that state will not go back to sleep easily. You have to change them, shower them, put them back into a clean bed. and that's going to affect their next day's health, all kinds of disruption to their lifestyle. So this is a very valuable solution that has to be thought through from that angle, but also just the health benefits, right? The things that happen when you're soiled and skin tearing and so on and so forth. There's a huge health benefit, and I think the cost of what we're seeing coming to market is very affordable, and it can be rationalized, and family members are well willing to pay for the cost of it.
Well, and it's interesting because now that opens up another category of solutions that senior living operators are looking for. It's not just the resident experience and the caregiver experience, but also the family member experience. Oftentimes they're the ones who are paying for it, but also like helping them just feel better about having mom or dad, in this, facility, but also ways that, there could be more joy, right? Like, so living their best life, and that feedback to the families. Like, what have you seen, or what are you looking for that really extends the experience of senior living beyond just the resident?
Yeah, so I'll try not to plug my friends right here, Rendeavor, and he's done an amazing job. I think he's leading the industry on VR technology, and the experiences that he's bringing to residents. Sometimes personal experiences. We're seeing it on campus. We've done some pilots with Rendeavor, and the joy of somebody who's just been isolated. Now they suddenly see family events or places they visited through this VR experience. It's game changing, and I think operators are realizing there may not be any other way to bring that experience to a resident, and we have great startups like Rendeavor are doing that very, very well. So I think those are good examples. Also, we're seeing on resident engagement technology, it's come a long way. There's a lot of fun things that are interacting between grandchildren, grandparents, and I think that's coming along, and there's been a lot of consolidation, but it's a mature side of senior living. I think COVID accelerated it too.
Yeah, and really, so technologies that bring families into the senior living is just as important as the technology that's in the senior living. Right. So, Nick, thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Okay, so you have a bright idea, but you need some of that data and that, evidence to show that it is working, that it is effective. How do you get funding for that? How do you get resources for that? Well, lucky for us, Todd Haim runs the NIA for the National Institute of Aging for the NIH and has a lot of programs to help you out. So let's hear about it. Thank you, Todd.
How's everyone doing? Good. All right, I love it. So just to start off, so I know the crowd, how many do we have? I see 2 of our companies, but do we have more? Who's funded by the NIA right now? Okay, just 2 or so. All right, so happy to be here and talk to you a little bit about our program. So I am at the National Institutes of Health, NIH, specifically at the National Institute on Aging. So we are now the 3rd largest institute at the NIH. Our focus is health of older adults. Within the NIA, we spend a lot of money on innovation. And how do we bring innovations to market? How do we support innovators that can get to the market? And one of the main ways we do that is through seed funding programs using non-dilutive grant mechanisms. What's non-dilutive grant mechanisms? That means that we don't have any say on the balance sheet. We don't take any equity. It's not a loan. There's no repayment. It's essentially free money. There's always a check, right? So I'd say if there's any cost, is that it is a government process. It is a government application. You really have to invest in thinking about what you're trying to do and really show us how the funds that you get will move that product forward. Fortunately, we have 2 great examples of that. Care Coach, Victor, want to raise your hand? And Kyle and Rendeavor, who you just heard about, are companies that have been able to use several of our grants to really move their products pretty far forward. So those are examples. You can start out, so overall, it's about this year, we just got, as you know, Congress just passed a budget about a week or 2 ago. And this year, it's going to be about $150 million. That's at the NIA, just in the seed funding programs for startups. So the overall NIA budget is about $4 billion, over $4 billion now. but 150 million of that specifically goes to startups. It's a program that's grown dramatically. Back in 2015, it was only 32 million. So what does that growth mean? That growth means that we need more innovations to fund that will really help older adults. So what types of things are we looking to fund? As I said, the health of older adults. Now that's not just medicines, right? It's technology. It's thinking about how to reduce social isolation. How do we figure out the challenges around caregiver coordination, caregiver navigation? How do we think about aging in place, but also how do we also elevate the experience in senior living? So thinking about all these different pieces that are all part of the puzzle are the types of things that we're trying to support.
Love it. So when a startup comes to you, Todd, what do they need to have in place? What's the level of readiness, the stage? How much do they need to have already figured out about their technology and their solution? And then what resources do you provide on like the mentorship side?
Both great questions. So we actually do have, thanks to AARP, who's put together this amazing pavilion and really is leveraging, all the different players out there and helping us be able to move things forward. So because of that, we do have a kiosk here on the left side. I definitely encourage you to stop by there. We have brochures. We have a PowerPoint that if you email us, we'll send you that PowerPoint. And it has in it all the steps that are needed to write a competitive application, including a one-page format that we tell you to send to us before you apply. We know it's a lengthy process. We want to give you that advice before you apply to help you out. So we have a one-pager. You send us that one-pager. We will review it. We will have a call with you. We will provide guidance. Then you will go through the actual submission. You don't need to do that step, but everyone that's done it has told me it's helpful. Once you get funded, then we also have several resources to help support you and move you forward. Whether, depending where you come in, it could be entrepreneurial development if you're a first-time entrepreneur. If you have entrepreneurial experience, it could be helping you attend pitch events and pitching a company and getting partners. So there's lots of different ways that we can support you once you're funded in the program. And as far as the level of data, it really depends on the field and on what you're doing. Our phase ones are considered proof of concept. So they're typically $300,000 to $500,000, usually 6 months to a year. You don't need to have data coming in, but it helps to show that you have something, right? So to really be competitive, you want to be able to show that rationale that you could actually pull off what you're saying you could pull off. If you already have a lot of data, you can actually skip that stage altogether and come in for what's either phase 1 and phase 2 combined, which we call fast track, or just a direct to phase 2. What's a direct? So those phase 2s are actually $2 to $2.5 million. So if you have a lot of data coming in, let's say you already have a prototype, maybe you've already done a focus group, you know what the customers are looking for, then come in straight for that $2 million award, and you can really, do real development work with those funds. So again, should you do a phase 1? Should you do a fast track? Should you do a direct to phase 2? How would you know? Come talk to us. Send us that one pager. We'll give you that guidance.
Awesome. So now do startups have to do it alone when they apply, or does it help them to have letters of intent, let's say, from potential customers or partners? Do they have a joint application process? Do you look at like how the startup fits into like an ecosystem as part of your requirements?
Yeah, all great questions. So the startup comes in, they do the application. They can get help. So, there are grant writers. There's several firms. If you Google NIH, SBIR grant writing support, there's several firms that do this. It can help in the writing part, but you still have to be the one that is getting that message across, right? That only you can do that. But they can help explain the different forms. We do have application assistance programs if you've never applied before. That's something definitely to consider. This year we actually also launched, if you're never applied, never had SBIR before from NIA, especially if you're a relatively new entrepreneur, we launched a startup challenge especially for underrepresented innovators. And we had 20 finalists go through that program. They went through a 4-month accelerator. And just in those 4 months before they got any money from us, now I think 6 of them have won pitch competitions in 4 months, which is incredible. We're really proud of them. So there are so many ways to come into our program. And again, we can help advise on which way, come talk to us, and we'll go from there.
Well, I'm glad you brought the notion of new entrepreneur. So does somebody have to be a very seasoned entrepreneur to get like the big $2 million grants, or can first-time entrepreneurs, access your resources?
First-time entrepreneurs can. It does, with the bigger grants, it's a longer application, so you actually have to have a commercialization plan and things like that. So it's not so much the entrepreneurial experience in that case, but the grant writing experience. So if it's a first-time entrepreneur, but let's say they're working with or have been an academic and they're familiar with how to write an NIH grant, then they might be okay. But if they've never written a grant, they might want to come in with that smaller project and then go from there. But again, that's the advice we would give in a one-on-one conversation.
Awesome. Well, Todd, you've been a huge support. I know all the startups that I work with, when you came in, you gave a master class
awesome.
on SBIR grant writing for 2 hours, and that met one-on-one with our startups, looking at their grant application. It gave them amazing advice. To this day, they still cherish that. So Todd, thank you for being an incredible partner in the ecosystem and for allowing so much innovation to flow. And really our goal here, and I'm loving the standing room only here, because our whole objective of doing this whole pavilion is to attract more innovators to this field. We need you all. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Todd, for the work that you do. Reach out and connect, and we can't wait to see more companies commercialize out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Danielle, for being the trailblazer that you are. And thank you to AARP for making this all possible.